Nora knew the sound of her own front door like a heartbeat. That night, it opened too quietly. She stepped into the house still wearing her work heels, her laptop bag digging into her shoulder, the December air clinging to her coat like damp smoke. The living room was dark. No TV, no music, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the hallway clock. Steady, patient, almost mocking. Then she heard it. A voice from the kitchen. Sharp, guttural. The kind of whisper that's meant to cut deeper than a shout. "Don't you dare touch that. You're not my problem." Nora froze. For a second her brain tried to rearrange the words into something harmless. A joke. A misunderstanding. Anything but what it sounded like. But then came another sound. Soft, thin, almost swallowed. A breath trying not to become a sob. A chair scraped the floor. And something inside Nora's chest tightened so hard it felt like it might snap. She walked toward the kitchen, slow at first, like stepping into a room where she already knew the truth would hurt. The light under the doorway was a dull, yellow glow, the kind that makes everything feel older than it is. The smell hit her before she even crossed the threshold. Burnt coffee, sour dishwater, and something else. Stale, like a house that had been lived in without being cared for. She pushed the doorway open, and the scene stopped her cold. Her husband, Mark, stood in the middle of the kitchen like he owned the air in it. One hand clenched around a pill bottle. The other hand was pointed like a weapon, jabbing, accusing, controlling. In the far corner, backed against the cabinets like she was trying to disappear into the wood, was his mother, Evelyn, 81 years old. Thin in a way that didn't look natural, thin like time had been eating her faster lately. Her gray hair was pulled back too tight, but loose strands had fallen out, clinging to her damp temples. She wore a faded sweater that hung off her shoulders as if it belonged to someone bigger, healthier, younger. Her knees were drawn toward her chest like a child's, and her hands, those hands that used to knead bread and hold babies and pat Nora's cheek when she was exhausted, were trembling. There was a dark bruise blooming along her forearm, purple fading into yellow. Fresh enough to still look angry. Nora's eyes went straight to it, then to the pill bottle, then to Mark's face. He didn't even turn around at first. He was too busy towering over his mother like she was a stubborn dog he was trying to train. "I told you," he hissed, shaking the pill bottle slightly. "You take what I give you. You don't get to decide anything anymore. You understand me?" Evelyn's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her throat worked like she was trying to swallow fear itself. Her eyes were wide and wet, fixed on the floor as if looking up would make him worse. Nora couldn't breathe. This was Mark, the man who smiled at neighbors, the man who held doors open at church, the man who posted family photos online with captions about blessings and gratitude. And here he was in their kitchen, treating his own mother like she was nothing. Nora's voice came out rough and low. "Mark," he turned, and for half a second his expression flickered, just a crack in the mask. Surprise, annoyance, calculation. Then it settled into something smooth. "Nora," he said, like she'd interrupted a normal conversation, "you're home early." Nora didn't answer. Her gaze went back to Evelyn's bruised arm, then to her face. The older woman looked up now, just a little, and the shame in her eyes nearly brought Nora to her knees. It wasn't just fear. It was embarrassment. Like Evelyn believed she deserved this. Like she was sorry for being seen. Nora took a step forward, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. The sound felt too loud in that tense, sticky air. "What is this?" Nora asked, her voice trembling with anger she didn't even recognize yet. "Why is she in the corner?" Mark let out a short laugh, but it wasn't real humor. "Because she's being difficult," he snapped, and the sweetness in his voice dropped away like a curtain. "She keeps messing with her meds. She keeps trying to call people. She what?" Nora cut in. Mark's jaw tightened. "She's senile, Nora. She forgets things. She lies. You know how she is." Evelyn flinched at the word lies like it stung her skin. Nora looked at Evelyn again. Really looked. The older woman's lips were pale. There was a faint red mark along her wrist, like fingers had gripped too hard. Her breathing was shallow, fast, the way people breathe when they're trying to be quiet so they don't make someone angry. And then Nora noticed something else. On the kitchen table, among scattered mail and receipts, there was a manila envelope, open, and inside it, half pulled out, were papers with bold lettering at the top. Power of attorney. Nora's stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling. She stared at the papers, then at Mark. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Why are those out?" Mark stepped forward quickly, too quickly, blocking her line of sight, as if his body could erase what she'd already seen. "It's nothing," he said. "Just paperwork, adult stuff. Don't start making a scene." Nora's hands clenched at her sides. A scene? This wasn't a scene. This was a crime unfolding in her kitchen under bad lighting and good lies. She swallowed hard and forced herself to move closer, not to Mark, but to Evelyn. Nora crouched slightly, lowering herself so she wasn't towering, so she wasn't another threat. "Evelyn," Nora said softly, "look at me." Evelyn's eyes lifted, and they were full of a quiet terror that didn't belong in any home. Her voice came out thin. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't mean to be trouble." Nora's throat burned. Mark exploded. "For God's sake," he barked. "Stop acting like she's some victim. She's manipulating you right now. That's what she does. She's always been good at playing helpless." Nora stood up slowly, her whole body buzzing with shock. And then Mark said something that made Nora's blood turn cold. "If you're going to take her side," he said, eyes hard, "then you can deal with her. But don't come crying to me when she ruins everything. Ruins everything." Nora stared at her husband, the man she thought she knew, while his mother sat trembling in the corner like a punished child. And in that moment, Nora understood something terrifying. Whatever was happening to Evelyn wasn't new. It wasn't a one-time argument. It was a system, a routine, a private kind of cruelty that had been living inside this house while Nora was out building a career, closing deals, chasing success, believing she was doing the right thing. And now she was seeing it, too late, or maybe just in time, because the bruise on Evelyn's arm was only the beginning, the papers on the table were only the surface, and the truth behind Mark's smile, behind the good son act, was about to tear their family apart in a way Nora could never unsee. So listen closely. Stay with me until the end of this story, because what Nora discovers next won't just change how she sees her husband. It will change how she sees herself, and the cost of being absent while someone you love suffers in silence. And before we go any further, tell me this. Have you ever realized someone's true character only when you saw what they did behind closed doors? Nora Whitman lived by calendars, alarms, and the steady pressure of being needed everywhere, except where it mattered most. Most mornings she was up before the sun, moving through her Chicago condo like a person trying to outrun silence. Coffee brewed strong, hair pulled back tight, a blazer that always smelled faintly like dry cleaning solvent and stress. Her phone would already be buzzing with emails from the West Coast, reminders from her assistant, meeting links, urgent messages marked with red exclamation points like someone's life depended on her showing up. In her world, success wasn't an abstract idea. It was measurable. Billable hours, quarterly targets, clients who expected immediate answers, a reputation that could be bruised with one missed call. And Nora had learned, slowly and painfully, to treat emotion like an inconvenience, not because she was heartless, because emotion had never paid her rent, never protected her from disappointment, never kept her safe when she was younger and her own father walked out and her mother learned to smile through exhaustion. So Nora became the person who didn't fall apart, even when she felt like it, especially when she felt like it. Mark used to admire that about her. He'd call her unbreakable in front of friends, as if it was a compliment instead of a warning sign. He'd say it with pride at dinner parties, how Nora could handle anything, how she never let life get to her. But unbreakable also meant busy. It meant missed family dinners and hurried goodnight kisses. It meant promising she'd visit Evelyn this weekend, and then watching the weekend get swallowed by another project, another crisis, another flight. And somewhere in that cycle, Nora stopped noticing what was happening inside her own home. Evelyn Whitman had moved in 2 months earlier. It had been framed as temporary. "She just needs a little help," Mark told Nora, "just until we figure out a better setup." Nora remembered the first day Evelyn arrived with 2 suitcases and a small cardboard box taped shut. Evelyn smiled the whole time, as if she was a guest who didn't want to overstay, even though her hands shook when she tried to lift her own bag. "It's no trouble," Evelyn had insisted, voice soft. "I don't need anything special. I can stay out of the way." Out of the way. That phrase should have been a red flag, but Nora was running on fumes and obligation. She nodded and said all the right things. She hugged Evelyn gently, felt how small her body had gotten, felt the fragile ridge of her shoulder bones under the sweater, and she promised herself she'd pay more attention. Then work came calling again, as it always did, and attention became the first thing she sacrificed. That Thursday, on the day everything cracked open, Nora's schedule had been brutal. 3 back-to-back meetings, one of them with a client who spoke to her like she was a machine. A late lunch eaten standing up in a hallway. A conference call that dragged on until her ears rang. By the time she finally left her office downtown, the sky had turned the color of wet concrete. She didn't plan to go home early, but the last meeting got canceled unexpectedly, and for once, Nora's body answered before her mind could argue. Go home. Breathe. See what's there when you're not racing. She drove through traffic, her fingers tight around the steering wheel, the heater barely working, the city lights reflecting like smeared gold across the windshield. In her head, she pictured the house quiet, Mark on the couch, maybe complaining about work, Evelyn in her small guest room watching old TV shows, wrapped in a blanket. Normal, predictable, safe. That illusion shattered the moment she walked through the front door. The dark living room, the sour smell, the hiss of Mark's voice, and Evelyn, cornered like an animal. Nora's memory of the next few minutes came in flashes, like her brain couldn't process the full scene without breaking it into pieces. Mark's hand around the pill bottle, Evelyn's bruised forearm, the manila envelope on the table with legal paperwork half exposed, the way Evelyn apologized like she had done something wrong simply by existing, and Mark's face, too calm, too controlled, when he realized Nora had seen. Nora didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She didn't do what people in movies do. She just went very still, the way she did in courtrooms when someone lied under oath. Her eyes moved across the kitchen again, slower this time, collecting evidence. A stained dish towel tossed on the floor, a cup of cold tea with a skin formed on top, a trash bin that smelled like old medication blister packs, and on the counter, near the sink, a small notepad with handwriting that wasn't Evelyn's. Evelyn, no calls. No extra food. Meds only as directed. Nora's mouth went dry. "Mark," she said, low and controlled, "why does this look like rules?" Mark's expression sharpened. He didn't like that word. He didn't like anything that implied he was doing something wrong. "It's organization," he snapped. "You wouldn't understand because you're never here." The accusation landed like a slap, because it was partly true, and Mark knew exactly how to use that. Nora stepped closer to the table. "Those papers," she said, nodding toward the manila envelope. "Why are you handling power of attorney paperwork without telling me?" Mark's body shifted, instinctively blocking the documents again. "You're jumping to conclusions," he said. "It's not your business. Not her business." Nora stared at him, feeling something cold rise in her chest. Not just anger, recognition. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a bad day. This was control. And it had been happening while she was gone. Evelyn made another small sound, like a weak breath, and Nora turned immediately. The older woman's face had drained of color. Her hand trembled against her stomach. "Evelyn?" Nora asked, her voice changing instantly, softer. "Are you okay?" Evelyn blinked, eyes glassy, and tried to smile through it. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I get a little dizzy." Mark rolled his eyes. "She's dramatic." Nora ignored him. She moved closer, crouching, trying to make herself smaller and safer. "Did you fall?" Nora asked, scanning Evelyn's arms and wrists. "How did you get that bruise?" Evelyn's gaze flicked to Mark, just for a second. That was all Nora needed to see. Evelyn's answer came too quickly, too rehearsed. "Oh, I bumped into the doorframe. I'm clumsy." Mark exhaled like the matter was settled. "See?" But Nora wasn't looking at Mark anymore. She was looking at Evelyn's eyes, at the fear there, at the way her lips pressed together like she was holding back words she wasn't allowed to say. Nora reached out slowly and touched Evelyn's hand. The skin was cold, too cold. "Let's sit you down," Nora said. Evelyn tried to shift, tried to stand, but her legs wobbled. Her knees bent, and her weight sagged forward. Nora caught her instinctively. Evelyn's body felt lighter than it should, fragile, like she could disappear. "Nora," Mark started. But Nora didn't hear him fully because Evelyn suddenly slumped harder, her head drooping toward Nora's shoulder. Her breath turned shallow. Her eyes fluttered. Nora's entire body snapped into action. "Mark, get your keys," she ordered. "Now." Mark frowned. "She's fine. Now." The word cut through the kitchen like glass. Mark hesitated, startled by the tone, then moved. But as he did, Evelyn made a faint choking sound, and her hand gripped Nora's sleeve weakly, like she was trying to hold on to the only thing that felt safe. Nora's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Evelyn," she whispered urgently, "stay with me. Hey, look at me." Evelyn's eyes barely opened. Her lips moved. Nora leaned in, desperate to catch the words. And in that thin space between consciousness and collapse, Evelyn whispered something that didn't make sense yet, but it hit Nora like a warning. "Don't let him sign." Then her body went slack. For one terrifying second, the whole world narrowed to the weight of Evelyn in Nora's arms and the smell of burnt coffee and the ticking clock that kept going like nothing had changed. Nora grabbed her phone and called 911 with hands that didn't shake until after she hung up. When the paramedics arrived, they moved fast, gloves snapping, a stretcher unfolding, questions fired off like bullets. How long has she been like this? Does she take medication? Any history of falls? Any dementia? Is she diabetic? Mark answered too quickly, too confidently. Nora watched him like a hawk. Every word he said sounded practiced, like he'd prepared for this exact moment. When a paramedic asked about her medications, Mark pulled out the pill bottle, already in his pocket, like he'd been holding it all along. Nora felt sick. Why was it in his pocket? Why was he carrying it like it was his property? They loaded Evelyn into the ambulance. Nora climbed in without asking permission. Mark started to follow. One of the paramedics looked him up and down. Only one family member. Mark's eyes flicked to Nora, sharp and resentful. Nora didn't look back. As the ambulance doors shut, she heard Mark's voice through the crack. Tight, warning. "Don't make this bigger than it needs to be." Then the doors closed, and Nora was left with the sound of the siren starting up, bright and violent, cutting through the night as the city blurred past the small back window. At the hospital, the fluorescent lights made everything feel too exposed, too clinical. The air smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. Nurses moved with tired efficiency, their shoes squeaking against polished floors. They took Evelyn back quickly. Nora sat in a plastic chair, her knees bouncing, her mind racing through every moment of the last 2 months. Every time she'd walked past Evelyn's room and heard silence. Every time Evelyn had said, "I'm fine, honey," with a smile that looked a little too thin. Every time Mark had told Nora, "She's asleep," or "She's not feeling up to visitors," or "She gets confused when too many people talk to her." Nora had accepted it, because acceptance was easier than confronting the possibility that something was wrong. After what felt like hours, but was probably 40 minutes, a doctor approached, reading from a chart. "Mrs. Whitman?" he asked. Nora stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly. "Yes, that's me. Is she okay?" The doctor's expression was careful. She's stable right now. She was dehydrated. Her blood pressure was low. We're running additional tests. Nora's relief was immediate, but it didn't last. Why would she be dehydrated? Nora asked, voice sharp with fear. She lives with us. The doctor hesitated. That tiny pause screamed louder than any siren. We see this sometimes, he said gently, with older patients, especially when their care at home isn't consistent. Care at home. Nora felt her stomach twist. He continued, there are also signs of bruising that don't fully match a simple fall. We'll document everything. Nora swallowed. Can I see her? In a few minutes, he said. She's being settled into a room. Nora nodded, but her hands were cold again. A nurse led Nora down a hallway and into a small room where Evelyn lay in a hospital bed, pale under thin sheets. A heart monitor beeped steadily at her side. An IV ran into her hand. Evelyn looked smaller than ever, swallowed by white pillows. And she was alone. No Mark, no family, no comforting hand holding hers, just an old woman in a sterile room, breathing quietly like she was used to being left behind. Nora walked to the bedside slowly, her throat burning. She took Evelyn's hand carefully, the skin papery and cool. Evelyn's eyes fluttered open. When she saw Nora, her expression softened in relief, and then, heartbreakingly, guilt. You shouldn't have come, Evelyn whispered. Nora blinked hard. Don't say that, she said, voice cracking despite her best efforts. Of course I came. Evelyn's lips trembled. I didn't want to cause trouble. There it was again, that belief, that she was a burden. Nora squeezed her hand gently. You're not trouble, she said. You're family. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. He tries, she whispered, and the words sounded like a defense, like she was still protecting Mark. Mark is under a lot of stress. Nora's jaw tightened. Evelyn, what happened at home? Evelyn's gaze slid away, toward the window, toward anything that wasn't Nora's eyes. The silence stretched. The monitor beeped. Outside the room someone laughed softly, like life was normal somewhere else. Then Evelyn whispered, barely audible, Please, don't make him angry. Nora felt the world tilt. She leaned in close, voice low. Did he hurt you? Evelyn's breathing quickened. Her fingers tightened around Nora's hand. She didn't answer. That was an answer. Nora stood there in that cold hospital light, her heart breaking in a way success had never prepared her for. And as she stared at the faint bruises on Evelyn's arm, bruises that had been explained away, ignored, minimized, Nora realized the most terrifying part wasn't just what Mark had done, it was what Nora had allowed to happen by being absent. The door opened behind her. Nora turned, expecting Mark, but it was a hospital social worker, clipboard in hand, eyes serious. Mrs. Whitman, she said quietly, I need to ask you a few questions about Evelyn's living situation. There are some concerns. Nora's throat went tight. What kind of concerns? The social worker glanced down at her notes, then back up. We have records showing missed prescriptions, she said, utility notices addressed to Evelyn, and a document in her file, signed last month, that doesn't match her signature history. Nora felt her blood run cold. Signed. Last month. A signature that didn't match. Nora's mind flashed back to the manila envelope on the kitchen table. Power of attorney. Her voice came out as a whisper, but it carried all the weight of dread. What document? She asked. The social worker hesitated, then said, a consent form authorizing someone else to make financial and medical decisions on her behalf. Nora's grip on Evelyn's hand tightened. Evelyn's eyes closed, and a tear slipped down into her hairline like she couldn't bear to look at what she'd been forced into. And Nora, standing in that hospital room with fluorescent lights and quiet beeping, and an elderly woman who looked like she'd been disappearing for months, understood one brutal truth. This wasn't just neglect. Someone had been taking control of Evelyn's life, and Nora was finally close enough to see it. Nora stayed beside Evelyn's bed long after the doctor left, long after the hallway outside settled into that late-night hospital rhythm. Soft footsteps, distant intercom crackles, the occasional squeak of a cartwheel. Evelyn dozed in short bursts, never fully relaxing. Every time a nurse adjusted the IV or a monitor beeped a little louder, her eyelids fluttered and her shoulders tensed, like her body had learned that rest was risky. The social worker returned with a calm face that didn't match the seriousness in her eyes. She introduced herself as Dana, and she spoke in the careful tone people use when they're trying not to panic someone who's already close to breaking. "I'm not here to accuse you," Dana said softly, standing near the doorway with her clipboard tucked against her chest. "I'm here to understand what's been happening at home." Nora's throat felt raw. "Something has been happening," she replied, and she hated how small her voice sounded. I didn't see it." Dana nodded like she'd heard those words 100 times. "Tell me about Evelyn's daily routine. Who helps her? Who manages her medications? Who takes her to appointments?" Nora glanced at Evelyn's thin hand resting on the sheet, the IV tape wrapped around her skin like a bandage for a deeper wound. "Mark said he handled everything," Nora said. "He told me it was easier, that she got confused when too many people were involved." Dana's pen moved quietly across the paper. "How often did you personally see Evelyn during the day?" The question stung because it was fair. Nora swallowed. Not enough. There it was again. That sharp, sick feeling of realizing her ambition had left a space where protection should have been. Dana stepped a little closer, lowering her voice. "We're seeing signs of inconsistent care," she said. "Dehydration doesn't happen overnight. And the bruising, it raises concerns." Nora's jaw tightened. Mark said she was clumsy. Dana held Nora's gaze for a long moment. "Elderly patients do bruise more easily," she acknowledged. "But patterns matter. Context matters. Fear matters." Nora felt her pulse kick up. "Fear?" Dana looked toward Evelyn, then back. "When I spoke to her briefly in triage, she seemed worried about making someone upset." Nora's stomach turned. That wasn't just stress. That was conditioning. A nurse stepped into the room to check Evelyn's vitals. Her name tag read, Lisa. She looked tired but kind, the kind of person who'd seen too much and still hadn't hardened all the way. Lisa glanced at Nora and lowered her voice. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Nora nodded quickly. "Does she have access to water at home?" Lisa asked. "Like, can she get herself a glass without being yelled at?" Nora blinked, stunned by the bluntness. "Of course," she started, then stopped because she realized she didn't actually know. Lisa's expression softened, but her eyes stayed serious. "I'm not trying to be dramatic. I've watched patients like her come in. They're sweet. They apologize for breathing. And most of the time there's a reason." Nora heard herself whisper, "What kind of reason?" Lisa didn't answer directly. She simply adjusted Evelyn's blanket, then said, "When she wakes up more, talk to her gently. She won't tell you everything right away. She'll protect whoever she thinks she has to protect." Protect. Nora felt the word land like a heavy stone. After Lisa left, Nora sat down and leaned forward, elbows on her knees, trying to ground herself. If you're watching this right now, picture it. An 81-year-old woman lying in a hospital bed, too scared to say what's been happening to her. And ask yourself, how does a person get to that point inside their own family? The answer usually isn't one big moment. It's a slow erosion. It's a daily routine that turns into a cage. Dana asked a few more questions, then stepped out to make calls. "We may need to involve protective services," she said gently. "I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it because we have to keep her safe." Safe. Nora nodded, but inside, her mind was already racing toward home, toward the kitchen table, toward that manila envelope and Mark's face when she saw it. Evelyn woke up about an hour later, eyes cloudy but alert enough to recognize Nora. She tried to push herself up, immediately wincing. No, Nora said, standing and adjusting the bed slightly. "Don't move too fast." Evelyn's lips parted, and the first thing she did, before asking how she was, before asking why she was here, was apologize. "I'm sorry you had to come," she whispered. Nora felt anger swell again, but not at Evelyn. at whoever had taught her to say sorry for being alive. "Stop apologizing," Nora said gently, brushing stray hair from Evelyn's forehead. "You didn't do anything wrong." Evelyn's eyes darted to the door. "Is Mark—" "He's not here," Nora said quickly. "And you're safe right now." Evelyn's shoulders eased just a fraction, and that tiny shift told Nora everything Nora needed to know. Nora took a slow breath. "Evelyn," she said, careful, "I need you to tell me what your days have been like at home. Not what Mark says. What you've actually been living." Evelyn stared at the blanket for a long time, fingers picking at a loose thread like it was safer than making eye contact. "I get up early," she said finally, voice barely audible. "I always have. Even when Mark was little, I'd be up before him, make coffee, make toast." Nora nodded, listening, letting silence do its work. Evelyn continued haltingly. "Lately I try not to make noise. The floors creak. He doesn't like it when I'm up too soon." Nora's stomach tightened. "What happens if you're up too soon?" Evelyn's mouth trembled. "He gets irritated. He says I'm restless, that I'm trying to cause problems." Nora clenched her hands. "So what do you do?" Evelyn swallowed. "I sit in my room, by the window. I watch the street. Sometimes I see the mail truck. Sometimes I see the neighbor's dog." Her voice softened, almost wistful. "There's a little brown dog across the street. He always pulls on his leash like he wants to run free." Nora's chest ached. That image, an old woman watching a dog on a leash, felt like a mirror held up to Evelyn's life. "And breakfast?" Nora asked. Evelyn hesitated. I don't eat much in the mornings anymore." "Why?" Evelyn's eyes lifted for a second, then dropped again. "Mark says my stomach can't handle food like it used to. He says it's better if I keep it light." Nora tried to keep her voice steady. "Does he make you breakfast?" "Sometimes," Evelyn said. "Sometimes he leaves something, a granola bar, or a little bowl of cereal." She paused. "But I don't like to ask for more." "Why not?" Evelyn's answer was immediate, automatic. "I don't want to be a burden." Nora's throat closed. She forced herself to breathe. "Evelyn, you are not a burden." Evelyn looked at Nora then, eyes wet. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You have a life. You work so hard. You're busy. I don't want to make things harder." Nora could hear the echo of something familiar in those words, like Evelyn had heard them said aloud, maybe more than once. Busy, harder, don't make things harder. Nora leaned in. "Who says you make things harder?" Evelyn's lips pressed together, her gaze flicked away. There it was again, the wall. Nora decided to shift gently. "Tell me about your medication," she said. "Do you take it yourself?" Evelyn's fingers tightened around the thread. "I used to," she whispered. "I had one of those little plastic boxes. The days of the week, I kept it in my drawer." Nora's eyes narrowed. "Used to?" Evelyn nodded, ashamed. "Mark said I was mixing them up." "Were you?" Evelyn hesitated. I don't think so." Her voice cracked. "But he said I was. He said he found pills on the floor. He said I could hurt myself. So he took them." Nora's heart pounded. "And now he gives them to you." Evelyn nodded. "He brings them. He watches me swallow." Nora's skin prickled. "He watches?" Evelyn's voice dropped. "So I don't hide them." Nora's stomach lurched. "Why would you hide them?" Evelyn's eyes filled. She whispered, "Because sometimes they make me feel foggy, like I can't think, like I'm not myself." Nora's mind flashed to the kitchen scene, the pill bottle in Mark's hand, his control, his anger. "Have you told a doctor about that?" Nora asked. Evelyn shook her head quickly, almost frightened by the question. No, I'm fine. I don't want to cause trouble." Nora could feel herself shaking now, not from fear of Mark in that moment, but from the realization of how completely Evelyn had been trained into silence. "What about calling people?" Nora asked carefully. "Do you have your phone?" Evelyn's eyes flicked to the bedside table, where Nora's phone sat face down. "Mark keeps it," Evelyn admitted. "He said I was getting scammed. He said strangers call and confuse me." Nora's voice came out low and firm. "Did you try to call me?" Evelyn's face crumpled. "I did," she whispered. "Once, maybe twice." She blinked hard. "But I didn't want to bother you. And Mark, he got upset. He said you'd think he couldn't handle his own mother. He said I was trying to make him look bad." Nora's chest burned. "So you stopped." Evelyn nodded. Nora sat back, hands trembling. This wasn't just neglect. This was isolation, control, emotional manipulation wrapped in the language of care. Lisa returned briefly with a cup of ice chips and checked Evelyn's IV. As she adjusted the tape, she glanced at Nora's face, reading it. "You're hearing pieces," Lisa murmured. "It's always pieces first." Nora swallowed. "What else did you see?" Lisa hesitated, then spoke quietly. When she came in, her clothing was not clean, and she had pressure marks on her lower back. Not severe yet, but enough to suggest she's been sitting or lying down for long periods without help moving. She paused. That doesn't happen when someone's being cared for properly. Nora felt dizzy. Mark said he was taking care of her. Lisa's eyes held sympathy and warning at the same time. People say a lot of things. After Lisa left, Evelyn closed her eyes, exhausted. Nora sat in the silence, trying to stitch the story together from the scraps Evelyn could bring herself to say. Early mornings spent in a room by a window, trying not to creak the floors. Food controlled, water questioned, medication monitored, phone taken, shame installed like a lock on the inside of her mind. And still, Evelyn tried to protect Mark. Still, she minimized. Still, she blamed herself. Nora leaned forward again and spoke softly, like she was talking to a frightened child. "Evelyn," she said, "did Mark make you sign anything?" Evelyn's eyes snapped open. Just that small reaction made Nora's blood run cold. Evelyn swallowed, throat working. I don't remember," she lied, too fast. Nora didn't push hard, but she didn't let it go. "Evelyn, please. I saw papers. I saw power of attorney forms." Evelyn's face drained. She turned her head away, tears sliding into the pillow. "I didn't want it," she whispered. Nora's heart stopped. "You didn't want what?" Evelyn's voice was so small it almost disappeared under the beeping monitor. "He said it was for my safety. He said, if I loved him, I'd trust him." Nora felt like she couldn't breathe. "Did he threaten you?" Evelyn's shoulders shook. "He didn't have to," she whispered. He gets that look, like I'm ruining his life." Nora's eyes burned. She looked at the bruises again, at the fragile wrists, at the fear that lived in Evelyn's pauses more than in her words. Then Dana returned, and the expression on her face told Nora something had shifted. "We pulled more information," Dana said quietly. "There were several missed prescription refills under Evelyn's name, and there are bank alerts. Unusual withdrawals over the past 6 weeks." Nora's voice cracked. "Withdrawals?" Dana nodded. "Large amounts, frequent, and," she hesitated, "the account access appears to have been changed recently." Nora's mind raced, trying to keep up. "Changed how?" Dana looked down at her clipboard and then back up, eyes steady. "A new authorized user was added. Someone with legal authority." Nora felt her whole body go cold. Legal authority. Power of attorney. The kitchen papers. Mark's pocketed pills. Evelyn's whispered, "Don't let him sign." Nora stood so abruptly her chair scraped the floor. Evelyn flinched at the sound, then looked at Nora with pleading eyes, like she already knew what this meant. Dana spoke again, the words landing like a final warning. "We're also waiting on toxicology. One of the medications in her system doesn't match what her doctor prescribed." Nora's mouth went dry. Because if that was true, if Evelyn had been given something she wasn't supposed to have, then this wasn't just control and money. This was something darker, something that could have killed her. And as Nora looked down at Evelyn, frail, apologizing, terrified, she realized the most painful part wasn't only what might be happening now. It was the thought that Evelyn had been living with this for weeks, maybe months, and had been too scared to tell anyone. So let me ask you, if you were Nora, standing in that hospital room, hearing that your husband may have tampered with his own mother's medication, what would you do next? because Nora was about to go looking for answers, and the first place she needed to look was back inside her own house. Nora barely slept. She stayed in the hospital chair beside Evelyn's bed until the thin, gray edge of morning started bleeding into the window. The air in the room smelled like antiseptic and warm plastic. The heart monitor kept time with steady beeps that felt almost too calm for what was happening. Every time Evelyn drifted off, her face tightened like she was bracing for something even in her dreams. And every time Nora tried to close her own eyes, she saw the kitchen again. Mark's hand gripping that pill bottle, his voice sharp. Evelyn pressed into a corner like she belonged there. Around 6:30 a.m., Nora stepped into the hallway and finally checked her phone properly. 3 missed calls, all from Mark. 2 texts. The first one, "Where are you?" The second one, "Don't let strangers fill your head with nonsense." Nora stared at the screen, feeling something inside her go quiet. Not peace, focus. Like a part of her that used to negotiate contracts had taken control, the part that didn't get distracted by charm or excuses. She typed back only 2 words, "She's safe." Then she turned her phone off. Because if Mark was innocent, he would be worried about his mother's health. He wouldn't be worried about controlling the story. Nora walked back into Evelyn's room and watched her breathe. The older woman looked so small under the sheets that it made Nora's chest ache. Nora thought about all the times she'd been too busy to sit down and really listen, all the times Evelyn had smiled and said, "It's okay," while quietly shrinking into herself. And then Nora made a decision, one that felt terrifying and necessary at the same time. If Evelyn couldn't tell the whole truth yet, Nora would build it herself, piece by piece, from the people who had been around, from the cracks in the routine, from whoever had been watching, talking, hiding, taking. Because someone had failed Evelyn, and Nora wasn't going to let that failure get buried under polite explanations. Later that morning, Dana, the social worker, returned with a small folder of notes and a tired look in her eyes. "Adult Protective Services will be notified," Dana said. "It doesn't mean anyone is guilty yet. It means we take precautions, we document, we make sure she's safe." Nora nodded. "Do it." Dana looked relieved that Nora wasn't going to fight her on it. "One more thing," she added quietly. Evelyn listed an emergency contact besides Mark. Nora blinked. "Who?" Dana checked the file. "A woman named Kara Whitman. It says, daughter." Nora's stomach dropped. Mark had a sister, and Nora realized with a strange heat of shame that she barely knew her. Kara lived in Indianapolis. She came to Thanksgiving sometimes, stayed for a day, left early. Mark always said Kara was dramatic and always looking for a problem. Nora had believed him because it was easier than navigating family tension. Now, hearing Kara's name in a hospital file felt like finding a door Nora had ignored for years. "Can I call her?" Nora asked. Dana nodded. "I can't give you medical details to share, but you can contact family." Nora stepped out into the hallway again and turned her phone back on long enough to dial the number Dana gave her. It rang 3 times. Then a woman answered, breathless, like she'd picked up while moving. "Hello? Kara? It's Nora. Nora Whitman." Silence. Then Kara's voice changed, tight, guarded. "What's wrong?" Nora closed her eyes. "It's Evelyn. She's in the hospital." A sharp inhale. "What happened?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Nora said. "Mark, don't," Kara cut in, fast and harsh. "Don't you dare tell me it's nothing. Please don't." Nora opened her eyes slowly. "You sound like you already think it's something." Kara didn't answer for a second, and Nora could hear background noise. Traffic, a dog barking, maybe a TV. Normal life happening while something rotten sat in Nora's house. Then Kara said quietly, "Is she alone?" Nora swallowed. "She's with me. Thank God," Kara whispered. And that whisper carried a kind of grief Nora wasn't ready for. "Kara," Nora said, voice low, "I need you to tell me the truth. Has Mark been controlling with her?" Kara let out a laugh that wasn't humor at all. "He's been controlling his whole life," she snapped. "He just hides it better when people are watching." Nora's pulse spiked. "What do you mean?" Kara exhaled hard. "Look, I'm not trying to destroy my brother. I'm trying to protect my mother. And I tried to warn people, but Mark always makes it sound like I'm crazy." Nora leaned her shoulder against the wall. Her legs felt weak. "Warn people about what?" Kara's voice dropped. "He's good at making Mom feel guilty. He always has been. When Dad left, he acted like he was the man of the house at 16. And Mom, she let him. She needed someone. She was lonely. And he learned that if he acted offended, she would fold." Nora felt cold. "So she always apologizes." "Yes," Kara said, bitter. "She apologizes for being alive." Nora's throat tightened. "Kara, there's paperwork. Power of attorney. There are bank withdrawals. She said she didn't want to sign." Kara's breath caught. "He did it," she said immediately. Nora stiffened. "You can't know that." "I can," Kara said, "because he's in debt." Nora's heart slammed. "What?" Kara's voice sharpened. "He's not the good son he pretends to be. He's been behind on bills for months. He borrowed money from me last spring and never paid me back. And when I asked about it, he flipped it on me, told Mom I was harassing him." Nora squeezed her eyes shut. "Mark told me things were fine. Mark tells everyone what benefits Mark," Kara said. "Nora, listen to me. If Mom is in the hospital, you need to watch him. He will try to get access. He will try to sign things while she's weak." Nora's mind flashed to Evelyn's whispered words. "Don't let him sign." Nora's voice trembled. "Did you notice anything else? Any caregiver? Any neighbor?" Kara hesitated. "There was a woman," she said slowly. "A caregiver. Not official, I don't think. Mom mentioned her once. A friend of a friend. Mark said it was cheaper than an agency." Nora's stomach turned. "Do you know her name?" Kara paused, thinking. "Tanya, I think. And Mom said she smelled like cigarettes and wore a strong perfume." Nora looked down at her own hands, imagining Evelyn sitting in that house with someone unfamiliar, someone chosen by Mark, someone with access to everything. Kara continued, voice quieter. "I'm coming," she said. "I can drive to Chicago today." Nora's chest tightened with relief. "Please, call me if he shows up," Kara warned. "And Nora, don't let him isolate her again." Nora promised she wouldn't, even though she already felt the fear of confrontation rising like a storm. When she returned to Evelyn's room, Evelyn was awake, staring at the ceiling with that distant look older people get when they're trying to hold pain quietly. Nora sat beside her and took her hand. "Evelyn," Nora said softly, "I spoke to Kara." Evelyn's eyes widened, panic flickering. "No, please, she'll make Mark angry." Nora swallowed. "Evelyn, you keep saying that. I need you to help me understand why you're so afraid of him being angry." Evelyn's lips trembled. She looked toward the door like Mark might be standing there listening. Then she whispered, "Because when he's angry, he gets cold." Nora frowned. "Cold?" Evelyn nodded, tears forming. "He doesn't yell sometimes. Sometimes he just turns off. Like I'm nothing. Like I'm a problem to be managed." Nora felt something twist inside her. If you're watching this, think about that for a second. An elderly woman afraid not of being hit, but of being treated like she doesn't matter. That kind of fear doesn't come from one bad argument. It comes from repetition, from control, from a slow erasing of dignity. Nora kept her voice steady. "Evelyn, I'm going to ask you something, and you can just nod or shake your head if you don't want to speak." Evelyn blinked. "Did Mark ever keep you from eating or drinking when you wanted to?" Evelyn's eyes filled. Her chin dipped. Just a fraction. "Yes." Nora's throat closed. She forced herself through the next question. "Did he ever take your phone?" Evelyn nodded again, quicker this time. "Did he ever tell you not to call me?" Evelyn's eyes squeezed shut. A tear slid down her cheek. That was all the answer Nora needed. Nora wiped the tear gently. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. You're not alone anymore." Evelyn's mouth trembled. "I didn't want to ruin your marriage," she whispered. Nora felt her chest crack. "Evelyn," Nora said, voice breaking. "He ruined it. Not you." Evelyn looked like she wanted to argue, wanted to defend Mark the way she always did, but exhaustion won. Her eyes drifted shut again, and she whispered something so quietly Nora almost missed it. "There are others." Nora's blood ran cold. "Others?" she repeated. Evelyn's eyes opened again, fearful. "People. Who come?" "For papers." Nora sat up straighter. "Who came, Evelyn?" Evelyn swallowed. "A man," she whispered. "He wore a suit. He smiled too much." Nora's skin prickled. "A lawyer?" Evelyn nodded weakly. "When?" Nora pressed. Evelyn's gaze slid away. "One afternoon. Mark said it was just planning." Nora's mind raced. A lawyer, papers, power of attorney, bank withdrawals, a mismatched signature. She asked the next question carefully, like stepping around broken glass. "Did you sign something you didn't understand?" Evelyn didn't speak, but she lifted her hand slightly, trembling, and touched 2 fingers to her wrist, where that faint red mark had been, like a reminder of being held too tightly. Nora's breath stopped. Then Evelyn whispered, "He told me it was for my medicine." Nora's eyes burned. "But it wasn't." Evelyn's lips quivered. "I didn't want to make trouble," she said again, like a prayer, like a curse. Nora stood and walked to the window, pressing her forehead lightly to the glass. Outside, the city moved, like nothing was wrong. Cars, buses, people with coffee cups, regular life. And inside, Nora felt like she'd stepped into a hidden world where the sweetest person she knew had been quietly stripped of her rights. She turned back and looked at Evelyn. Then she thought of the house, the kitchen, that envelope, and the list on the counter. No calls, no extra food. Who wrote it? Mark? Or someone else? A caregiver? A friend of a friend named Tanya? A lawyer in a suit? Or someone in the neighborhood who noticed and said nothing? Nora realized something brutal. Even if Mark was the center of it, he might not be the only one involved. And the only way to protect Evelyn now was to find out exactly who had access to her life. Nora leaned over Evelyn and spoke softly, with a promise in every word. "I'm going to go home," Nora said. "I'm going to look for everything, papers, receipts, messages, anything that tells me what they've been doing, and I'm going to bring it back here." Evelyn's eyes widened, fear returning. "No," she whispered. "He'll know." Nora swallowed, voice firm. "Let him know," she said, "because I'm done being blind." Evelyn grabbed Nora's hand weakly. "Please," she whispered, panicked. Don't open the box." Nora froze. "The box?" Nora repeated slowly. Evelyn's eyes filled with terror. "The one in the closet," she whispered. "He said if anyone opens it, everything will end." Nora's heart hammered. A box, a closet, a threat. And suddenly the story stopped being only about bruises and bank withdrawals. It became about what was being hidden. Nora squeezed Evelyn's hand, trying to keep her voice calm, even as her stomach dropped into cold dread. "What's in the box, Evelyn?" she asked. Evelyn's lips parted, and then she looked toward the door again, like she could already feel Mark's presence closing in. And she whispered one word, so faint, so loaded. Nora felt it in her bones. Proof. Nora left the hospital with her jaw clenched so tight it hurt. She didn't tell Evelyn she was going home right away. She didn't want Evelyn to panic or guilt herself into silence again. She simply kissed her forehead, smoothed the blanket, and whispered, "I'll be back soon." Evelyn's eyes followed her with that frightened, pleading look that made Nora feel like she was walking away from a child in the dark. In the hallway, Dana stopped Nora near the nurse's station. "Just so you know," Dana said quietly, "if Mark shows up, the staff can limit what he's told. But we need you to be clear about what you want. Who is allowed in? Who is allowed to make decisions?" Nora's stomach tightened. "He's her son, and she's an adult," Dana said gently. "Unless there's a legal document that says otherwise." Nora heard the warning underneath that sentence. A legal document, power of attorney, consent forms, the kind of paperwork that could turn love into a weapon. Nora nodded slowly. "Put a note in her file," she said. "No document signed without me present. and no one takes her out of this hospital without a physician's clearance and a social worker present. Dana's eyes held Nora's for a beat. "Okay," she said. "And Nora?" Nora looked up. Dana's voice softened. "People who control the story at home will fight hard when that story starts to change." Nora didn't respond because she felt that truth in her bones. On the drive back, Chicago looked like a different city. The skyline wasn't beautiful. It was sharp, cold, indifferent. The streets were wet from overnight drizzle, reflecting brake lights like smeared blood. A gray wind pushed paper cups and scraps of trash along the gutters, and Nora kept thinking about what Evelyn had said. There are others, people who come for papers. A man in a suit who smiled too much. And the box. Don't open the box. It made Nora's stomach roll. What kind of proof scared an 81-year-old woman so badly she begged someone not to look at it? And why would Mark tell her everything will end if anyone opened it? Nora pulled into the driveway and sat with her hands on the wheel, staring at her own front door like it belonged to someone else. The house looked normal from the outside. Porch light, trim hedges, a wreath still hanging from the last holiday because she'd meant to take it down and never did. Normal. That's how secrets survive. She walked in, and the smell hit her again. Stale coffee, sour dishes, something faintly chemical like cleaning spray used to cover up something worse. The living room was tidy. Too tidy. Like someone had cleaned in a hurry after a storm. Her heels clicked against hardwood as she moved toward the kitchen. The chair Evelyn had been cornered beside was back in place now, pushed neatly under the table. The manila envelope was gone. Nora's eyes swept the room, sharp, searching. The notepad with the rules was gone too, which meant Mark had either cleaned it up, or someone else had. Nora stood in the middle of the kitchen, breathing shallowly. The silence felt aggressive, like the house was daring her to prove what she'd seen. She pulled out her phone, opened her notes app and typed one line, "Rebuild the last 6 weeks." Then she started moving. She opened drawers, cabinets, the junk drawer. The one Mark always claimed he didn't touch because it was Nora's chaos. Inside, she found something that made her heart skip, a small ring of keys she didn't recognize. 2 keys, both labeled with faded tape. One said CL, the other said box. Nora stared at them, her fingers going cold. Box. She looked toward the hallway closet. Evelyn's warning echoed in her head like a whisper pressed to her ear. Don't open the box. Nora forced herself to breathe. Not yet, she thought. Not until you know what you're dealing with. She kept searching. In the kitchen trash, under a layer of paper towels and coffee grounds, she found shredded pieces of paper. Not random, not old mail. She pulled them out carefully, spreading them on the counter like puzzle pieces. A bank logo, a partial account number, a line that read, overdraft fee. Another piece, final notice. Nora's mouth went dry. She grabbed a zip-top bag from the drawer and put the shreds inside like evidence. Then she opened the cabinet above the fridge. That's where Mark always kept things he didn't want Evelyn reaching. Snacks, alcohol, private stuff. Behind a row of canned soup, Nora found a folder. Thin, worn, handled too many times. Inside were printed emails. Not hers. Mark's. Subject lines that made Nora's stomach drop. Past due, immediate action required, payment arrangement offer, notice of default. Nora's heart hammered. Default meant mortgage, loan, something big. She flipped through quickly, scanning amounts, dates. Several months behind. More than one account. Mark had told her they were fine. Mark had told her he had everything handled. Nora's hand shook as she turned the pages, and then she found a smaller envelope tucked inside the folder. It held a business card, a lawyer's card. The name was clear, black letters on white stock, a downtown firm, and written on the back, in Mark's handwriting, were 2 words, "Bring her." Nora's breath caught. Bring her. Bring Evelyn. For papers. Nora felt her skin prickle. So Mark didn't just stumble into this. He planned it. She set the card down and moved to the living room, where the mail sat stacked in a neat pile on the side table, as if someone had organized it to look responsible. Nora flipped through. Most of it was normal. Grocery coupons, a catalog, bills. But then she saw it. Multiple envelopes addressed to Evelyn. Nora frowned. Evelyn didn't get mail like that. Not usually. She tore one open. A bank letter informing Evelyn of changes to her account access. A second letter, a utility bill notice in Evelyn's name, past due. A third, a medical insurance notice stating a policy update had been requested. Requested by whom? Nora's fingers tightened around the paper until it crinkled. If you're watching this right now, ask yourself something. How does a woman live in a house and not know the house is being used against her? How does a wife miss the paperwork that turns a mother into an asset? The answer is ugly, because the people doing it rely on one thing: your trust. Nora marched to the hallway and opened the closet door. Coats hung in a row. Scarves. An old vacuum. A cardboard box on the floor, pushed back into the corner like it wanted to disappear. She crouched and pulled it forward. It wasn't large, but it was heavy enough to make her arms tense. There was tape across the top, old and yellowing. Someone had resealed it more than once. Nora stared at it, feeling her pulse in her throat. This is it, her mind whispered. The proof. Her fingers hovered near the tape. And then she stopped, because she heard a sound. A car door outside. Footsteps. The front door unlocking. Nora's blood turned cold. Mark. She stood quickly, pushing the box back into the shadow. She closed the closet door softly, like the house itself might rat her out. Mark walked in like nothing was wrong. He had a travel mug in his hand. His tie was slightly crooked, like he'd rushed. His face had that tight, controlled expression he wore when he was trying to look calm, but wasn't. "Nora," he said, and his voice was too even. "What are you doing here?" Nora didn't answer right away. She studied him the way she studied a client who was lying. "Where were you?" she asked. Mark blinked, then scoffed. "Work. Where else?" "You didn't go to the hospital," Nora said. His jaw clenched. "They wouldn't let me in." "That's not true," Nora replied. "You didn't try." Mark's eyes hardened. "Don't do this," he warned. "Not right now." Nora stepped closer. "Tell me about the lawyer," she said. Mark's face flickered. Just a fraction. "What lawyer?" he snapped. Too fast. Nora held up the business card. The air between them changed instantly, like a fuse had been lit. Mark's voice dropped. "You went through my things." Nora's laugh was sharp and joyless. "Your things?" she said. "Those emails are about our life. Those bank notices are about your mother. And you put her name on bills like she's a credit line." Mark stepped forward. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Then explain it," Nora shot back. "Explain why Evelyn's account access changed. Explain why she's dehydrated and bruised. Explain why she's terrified of you." Mark's face twisted with anger. "She's confused," he snapped. "She's old. She forgets. She exaggerates. And you," he pointed at Nora like she was the problem, "you're finally home long enough to play hero, and you want to blame me because you feel guilty." The words hit their target because they were designed to. Nora felt guilt, flare, hot and immediate. And then she pushed through it. "Don't you dare," she said, voice shaking with rage. "Don't you dare use my absence to excuse your cruelty." Mark's eyes flashed. "Cruelty?" he repeated, incredulous. "I've been carrying her, feeding her, cleaning up after her, while you chase promotions and pretend your hands are clean because you're not in the room." Nora stepped closer, almost nose to nose now. "Feeding her," she whispered. "Then why did a nurse ask me if she had access to water without being yelled at?" Mark froze, just for a second, and that pause was louder than any confession. Nora saw it, his calculation, his decision about what lie to use next. "Those people," Mark said slowly, "they love drama. They see an old lady and assume abuse because it's easier than understanding dementia." Nora's voice went low and lethal. "She's not demented," she said. "She's scared." Mark laughed again, but it sounded strained. Scared of what? He demanded. Me? Come on, this is ridiculous. Nora held his gaze. Did you make her sign power of attorney? Mark's smile vanished. It's for her protection. Nora's stomach turned. Did she understand it? Mark's eyes narrowed. She understood enough. Nora's hands clenched. Did you hold her arm down? Nora asked suddenly, remembering Evelyn touching her wrist. Mark's face tightened like a door slamming. What did she tell you? He snapped. There it was. Not concern, not heartbreak. Control. Nora felt her heartbeat in her fingertips. You're worried about what she told me, Nora said softly. Not about what she went through. Mark's nostrils flared. You don't get to interrogate me in my own house. My house too, Nora said. And Evelyn's life. And you don't get to hide behind family titles while you treat her like property. Mark stepped back, anger rising. Fine, he hissed. You want the truth? The truth is, she was falling apart. She was wasting money. She was forgetting to pay bills. She was signing up for junk. She needed someone to step in. Nora's voice didn't waver. So you stepped in, she said, and took her phone, controlled her food, controlled her meds. Mark's eyes turned hard as stone. I did what I had to do. Nora swallowed, her stomach churning. And the withdrawals? She demanded. The missed refills? The toxicology report that doesn't match her prescription? Mark's face flickered, and then his voice sharpened into something Nora had never heard from him so clearly. Something dangerous. You need to stop talking to those hospital people, he said, slow and threatening. They don't know us. They don't know what she's like behind the sweet old lady act. Nora stared at him. That was the moment something snapped into place for her. This wasn't a man overwhelmed by caregiving. This was a man protecting a system. Nora took a step back, her mind racing. She needed leverage, proof, something that couldn't be talked away. The box, the key. Nora kept her face neutral, even as her body buzzed with fear. Where's Evelyn's phone? She asked suddenly. Mark's eyes narrowed. Why? Because she's entitled to it, Nora said. Where is it? Mark's mouth curled. You're not taking it. She'll call strangers. She'll call Kara and start drama. She'll call you in the middle of your meetings, and you'll get annoyed and dump her back on me. Nora's voice rose, sharp. I will never dump her back on you. Mark stepped closer again. You don't mean that, he said, quiet and cruel. You'll get tired. You always do. That sentence landed like a punch, because it contained a truth Nora hated. She had gotten tired. She had chosen work over discomfort. She had let Mark be the gatekeeper because it was convenient. And now Evelyn had paid the price. Nora's eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she said, Kara is coming to Chicago. Mark's face changed instantly. The calm broke. No, he said. She's already on her way, Nora replied. Mark's voice turned sharp. If she shows up, she will poison everything. She always does. Nora held his gaze. Or she'll see what you've been doing. Mark's hands curled into fists. And for a second, Nora wondered, truly wondered, if he might physically stop her from leaving. The thought sent a cold shiver up her spine. She kept her voice steady. I'm going back to the hospital, she said. And you're not going near Evelyn until the social worker clears it. Mark stepped forward. You can't do that. Nora's eyes narrowed. Watch me. Mark's smile returned, thin and ugly. You think you're in control because you finally noticed? He said quietly. Nora, you're late. You don't even know what you're stepping into. Nora's heart hammered. What does that mean? She demanded. Mark's eyes held hers like a challenge. Ask yourself, he said, why she's protecting me. Ask yourself what she did. Nora's stomach dropped. He was trying to twist the blame. Or worse, he was hinting at something Evelyn had done that Mark was using as a leash. Before Nora could respond, Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced down, and Nora saw his expression tighten again. He looked back at Nora. You should stop digging, he said softly, because once you open certain things, you can't close them. Then he turned and walked down the hall, leaving Nora standing in the living room with her whole body shaking. Nora exhaled slowly, forcing herself not to panic. She grabbed her bag, her phone, and the zip-top bag of shredded documents. She took the lawyer's card. She took Evelyn's mail. And before she left, she walked to that junk drawer again. She picked up the key labeled box and slipped it into her pocket. Because if Mark wanted her scared of what was hidden, then whatever was hidden was exactly what she needed. As she stepped outside, the cold air hit her like a slap. She climbed into her car and locked the doors immediately. Her hands trembled over the steering wheel, and for a moment she just sat there, breathing hard, trying to steady herself. Because Nora knew what came next. The confrontation had begun, the lies were surfacing, the trap was tightening, and the next time she saw Evelyn, Nora would have to decide something that could change everything. Does she protect the illusion of her marriage? Or does she protect the woman who had been suffering in silence right under her roof? And here's the question for you. If you found a key labeled box in your own house after learning your elderly loved one was being controlled, would you open it? Because Nora was about to. And what she finds inside will make it impossible for anyone to pretend this was just stress ever again. That night, the hospital felt like a different world. During the day, it was noise and movement. Phones ringing, doctors moving fast, families talking too loud to hide fear. But after midnight, the building settled into a quiet that made every sound sharp. A cartwheel squeaked. A distant monitor alarmed once and stopped. The air conditioning breathed cold air through ceiling vents like the place itself never slept. Nora sat in the same hard chair beside Evelyn's bed, her coat folded over her lap, the key to the box heavy in her pocket like a secret that could burn through fabric. Evelyn rested with her eyes closed, but she wasn't truly asleep. Nora could see it in her jaw, the way her fingers curled slightly each time footsteps passed the door. Even sedated, Evelyn's body stayed on alert, like it had learned to expect something bad without warning. Nora stared at Evelyn's hand, thin, veined, taped to an IV, and the guilt came in waves. Not the shallow guilt of, I should have visited more. The deeper kind. The guilt of realizing someone had been suffering in your home while you were busy being proud of yourself for providing. Nora's phone vibrated. Unknown number. She considered ignoring it, then answered quietly and stepped into the hallway. Hello? A man's voice, professional and cautious. Ms. Whitman, this is Daniel Hayes from Lakeshore Community Bank. I'm calling about unusual activity in Evelyn Whitman's account. Nora's chest tightened. I'm her daughter-in-law, Nora said. She's in the hospital. What kind of unusual activity? There was a pause. Papers shuffling. Several cash withdrawals and transfers over the past month. The pattern matches what we flag for potential exploitation. We attempted to reach Ms. Whitman, but the phone number on file is no longer active. Nora's throat went dry. Because her phone was taken, Nora said before she could stop herself. Daniel went silent for half a second. Then his tone softened. Do you have legal authorization to speak on her behalf? Nora swallowed. Not yet, but I'm working on it. Understood, Daniel said. I can't disclose everything without authorization, but I can tell you this. The person who added themselves to the account, who claimed legal authority, submitted a document that didn't pass our standard verification. The signature appears inconsistent. Nora's skin prickled. Inconsistent how? It doesn't match the signature we have on file, Daniel said carefully. And the form was delivered in person by a third party, not by Ms. Whitman herself. Nora's pulse spiked. Who delivered it? I can't give you the name without proper authorization, Daniel replied. But then he added, I can tell you it was not a bank courier. It was someone who seemed very eager to move quickly. Nora's mind flashed to Evelyn's words. A man in a suit who smiled too much. Bring her, Daniel continued. If exploitation is suspected, we typically freeze the account temporarily for protection. But there's a complication. Nora's stomach sank. What complication? The person on record as authorized has already requested a full closure. Daniel said quietly. "They're trying to move the remaining balance." Nora felt like the hallway tilted beneath her feet. "When?" "Tomorrow morning?" Daniel said. "Tomorrow morning." Nora's hands went cold. "Can you stop it?" "We can delay it if we receive a formal report or a protective hold request," he said. "But it needs to come from appropriate channels." Nora's jaw clenched. "I'll get it," she said. "I'll get whatever you need." "Ms. Whitman," Daniel said gently, "I'm sorry. We see this more than people realize." Nora didn't answer. Her throat was too tight. When she ended the call, she stood for a moment staring at the blank screen, hearing the words echo. Full closure, tomorrow morning. Evelyn's money. Her safety. Her last bit of control, being moved like furniture. Nora returned to the room and sat down slowly, forcing herself to stay calm. She looked at Evelyn's face. The older woman's lashes fluttered once, and Nora realized Evelyn could probably sense something in Nora's body, even without opening her eyes. Nora leaned in close. "Evelyn," she whispered, "I'm here. Nobody is taking anything from you anymore. Do you hear me?" Evelyn didn't respond, but her fingers tightened faintly around the blanket. A nurse entered quietly a few minutes later, a different one than earlier. Her name tag read Maria. She checked the drip rate, adjusted the monitor, then glanced at Nora with a look that said she'd been told something. "Ms. Whitman?" Maria asked softly. Nora stood. "Yes?" Maria's voice dropped. "Your husband came by earlier, around 10. Nora's stomach clenched. "He did?" Maria nodded. "He asked which doctor was on call. He wanted to speak privately. He said he had paperwork." Nora's skin went cold again. "Did he get to her?" Maria shook her head. "Not while she's under observation. But he was persistent. He tried to insist he was the only decision-maker." Nora swallowed. "What did you tell him?" Maria gave a small, tired exhale. "We told him the patient's chart indicates additional review due to concerns, and we told him any legal documents would need verification." Nora felt a slow, shaking relief. "Thank you." Maria's eyes held Nora's. "Listen," she said gently. "I'm not supposed to give advice, but I've worked nights a long time. The people who show up with paperwork at 10 p.m. are rarely the ones acting out of love." Nora's throat burned. "Did he say anything else?" Maria hesitated, then admitted quietly. "He asked if she was lucid enough to sign." Nora felt her hands curl into fists. Lucid enough to sign. Not, "Is she okay?" Not, "Is she in pain?" Just, "Can she sign?" Maria left, and Nora sat back down, trembling now. Not with uncertainty, but with clarity. Mark wasn't confused. Mark wasn't overwhelmed. Mark was trying to get ahead of something, trying to secure control before the system caught up. Nora looked at Evelyn and wondered how many nights Evelyn had spent lying awake in that house, listening for footsteps, worrying about being trouble, trying to protect her son while he quietly erased her. Hours crawled by. Nora texted Kara updates throughout the evening. Kara replied she was still driving, that Indianapolis traffic had been a nightmare, that she'd be there soon. Nora didn't tell Evelyn yet. She didn't want Evelyn to spiral into fear, but Nora kept checking the door, half expecting Mark to push it open with that thin smile and a pen in his hand. At around 1:20 a.m., the doctor returned briefly, a young resident with tired eyes. He spoke to Nora in the hallway. "Your mother-in-law is stable," he said. "But there's something you should know." Nora's stomach tightened. "What?" He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Her blood work suggests she's been given a sedative that wasn't prescribed by her primary physician. It's not dangerous at the level in her system, but it's concerning." Nora felt the air leave her lungs. So she was drugged. The doctor lifted a hand, cautious. "I'm not saying that yet. There are benign explanations, medication mix-ups, outdated prescriptions, even samples someone had at home. But combined with the other concerns, it's enough to keep her under observation." Nora's voice cracked. "It made her foggy," she whispered, remembering Evelyn's words. "She told me it made her feel like she couldn't think." The doctor nodded once, like the puzzle was forming a picture he didn't like. "We'll document it. he said, "and protective services will follow up." As he walked away, Nora leaned against the wall and tried to breathe through the pressure in her chest. If Mark had been dosing Evelyn to keep her calm, to keep her compliant, to keep her from calling anyone, then every apology Evelyn ever whispered wasn't just personality, it was survival. Nora went back into the room and sat beside Evelyn again. She watched the slow rise and fall of Evelyn's chest. She listened to the steady beat. She stared at the fluorescent light reflecting off the tile floor, making everything look harsh and unforgiving. And then, without warning, Nora's mind pulled her into a memory. Evelyn in a small kitchen years ago, a different house. Warm, yellow light. Nora was younger, newly married, still trying to earn her place in the family. She'd burned a casserole dish, embarrassed and close to tears. Mark had laughed and teased her in front of everyone, but Evelyn had stepped in quietly. She'd touched Nora's arm and whispered, "It's okay, honey. You're learning. We've all burned things." Then Evelyn had stayed late, helping Nora wash dishes. No judgment, no lectures, just presence. Warm water, soft humming, a steady kindness that didn't demand anything in return. Nora remembered thinking, "This woman loves without making noise." And now Evelyn lay here, bruised and afraid, still trying to protect the same son who had turned her love into leverage. Nora's eyes burned. She leaned forward and spoke softly, more to herself than anyone. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have listened." Evelyn's eyelids fluttered, and for the first time in hours, she opened her eyes fully. She stared at Nora like she was trying to make sure Nora was real. "Nora?" she murmured. "I'm here," Nora said quickly, taking her hand. "I'm right here." Evelyn swallowed, her voice thin. "Is he angry?" Nora's chest tightened. "Don't think about him," she said gently. "Think about you. Think about getting better." Evelyn's eyes glistened. "I didn't want to lose my son," she whispered. Nora felt tears spill now, quietly. "Evelyn, you were losing yourself." Evelyn's lips trembled. She looked toward the door, then back to Nora, and her voice dropped into a whisper. "He told me, if anyone finds out, they'll take me away, into one of those places." Nora's throat tightened. "A nursing home?" Evelyn nodded, fear rising. "He said I'd never see daylight again. He said I'd die alone." Nora's heart broke open. "That's not true," she said firmly. "That's not true. He said it to scare you." Evelyn's grip tightened weakly. "And the money," she whispered. "He said it's already gone. He said it was my fault because I needed help." Nora's jaw clenched. "It's not your fault." Evelyn shook her head slowly, tears running now. "I signed," she whispered. "I signed because I didn't want him to hate me." Nora's body went still. "What did you sign?" Evelyn's voice shook. "He said it was for my medicine." But it had other words. I couldn't read it well. "He took my glasses." Nora felt nauseous. "He took your glasses?" Evelyn nodded, ashamed. "Just for a moment," she whispered. "He said the print was too small anyway." Nora's hands tightened around Evelyn's. "Evelyn," she said, voice steady through fury. "Did anyone else see this? The man in the suit?" Evelyn's eyes widened. "Yes," she whispered. "He was there. He smiled. He said I was doing the right thing, and Mark stood behind him." Nora felt cold all over. "Did they record it? Did they take photos?" Evelyn hesitated. He had a folder," she whispered, "and a little stamp thing." "A notary stamp." Nora's stomach dropped. If it was notarized, undoing it would be harder. It would look official, clean, legal. Evelyn's eyes squeezed shut. "I didn't understand," she whispered. "I didn't understand." Nora leaned in close. "You didn't have to," she said. "They used your fear." Evelyn's breathing quickened. "And the box," she whispered suddenly, voice urgent, almost frantic. "Did you?" Nora shook her head quickly. "Not yet." Evelyn exhaled shakily, relief and terror mixing. "Good," she whispered, "because if you open it, he'll know I told." Nora's heart hammered. "Evelyn, what is in that box?" Evelyn stared at Nora, eyes wide with a fear that didn't belong to a hospital room. Then she whispered, "It's not just him." Nora went very still. "What do you mean?" Evelyn's lips trembled, and she looked toward the door again like she expected someone to burst in. "He owes them," Evelyn whispered. "They come for money. They come for signatures." Nora's blood ran cold. "Who is they, Evelyn?" Evelyn tried to speak, but her voice caught. Her eyes filled, and she shook her head weakly, like the words themselves were dangerous. Then the door opened. Nora's body tensed instantly. Kara walked in, hair windblown, eyes red from driving, face set in a hard, determined line. She stopped short when she saw Evelyn awake, then crossed the room fast and gently took her mother's other hand. "Mom," Kara whispered, voice breaking. "I'm here." Evelyn looked at Kara like she was seeing a ghost. Her lips trembled, and a small sob escaped. Kara looked up at Nora, and in her expression was a mix of gratitude and rage. "Where is he?" Kara asked quietly. Nora's jaw clenched. "He tried to come with paperwork," Nora said. "He asked if she was lucid enough to sign." Kara's face turned hard. "Of course he did." Nora swallowed, then said the words that made Kara's eyes widen. "The bank called," Nora said. "They're trying to close her account tomorrow morning, and the form didn't match her signature." Kara's hand tightened around Evelyn's. "Then it's happening," she whispered, almost to herself. Nora stared at her. "What's happening?" Kara's eyes flicked to Evelyn, then back to Nora. "Nora," Kara said, voice low, "there's something you don't know about Mark. Something he's been hiding for a long time." Nora felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Tell me." Kara hesitated, swallowing hard. "I will," she said. "But not here. Not in front of Mom. Not while she's this fragile." Nora's pulse hammered. "Kara." Kara leaned in closer, eyes sharp. "Just promise me something," she whispered. "Promise me you won't go home alone again." Nora's mouth went dry. "Why?" Kara's voice dropped into something raw and urgent. "Because if Mark realizes you're building a case, he won't just fight you in court." Nora's skin prickled. "What will he do?" Kara looked at Evelyn, at the bruises, the fear, the apology trapped in her mother's face. Then Kara looked back at Nora and said 4 words that made Nora's stomach drop. "He'll destroy the proof." And right then, as if the universe wanted to underline that warning, Nora's phone buzzed again. A text. From Mark. Just one line. "I know you took the key, and if you're listening right now, tell me, what would you do in Nora's place knowing the person you live with is watching your every move?" Because in that moment, Nora understood something terrifying. The box wasn't just evidence. It was a countdown. Morning arrived in a washed-out Chicago gray. Nora hadn't slept. She sat beside Evelyn's bed with her coat still on, her phone face down, the key pressing like a bruise in her pocket. Mark's last text, "I know you took the key," kept looping in her mind. It didn't sound like a husband asking questions. It sounded like a man watching. Kara stayed too, one hand always touching Evelyn's fingers. With Kara there, Evelyn looked a fraction calmer, but the fear still lived behind her eyes. Every time footsteps passed the door, Evelyn's shoulders tightened as if she expected a voice to snap at her. A day nurse named Paige checked vitals and spoke to Evelyn with a softness that felt almost shocking. "How are we feeling, Ms. Whitman?" Evelyn tried to smile. "I'm okay," she whispered, then added automatically, "I'm sorry for the trouble." Paige paused and said gently, "You're not trouble. You're safe here." Evelyn turned her face to the pillow, embarrassed by tears. Nora watched that, and something in her hardened. This wasn't only medical. Someone had been draining Evelyn's dignity at home. Around 9, Dana returned with an Adult Protective Services investigator, Ms. Lewis, and a hospital case manager. Ms. Lewis spoke calmly, like she'd learned that fear gets louder when adults sound uncertain. "Evelyn, I'm here to make sure you're safe," she said. "You're not in trouble." Evelyn's lips trembled. "I don't want anyone to get in trouble," she whispered. Ms. Lewis nodded. Sometimes safety requires questions. She asked about meals, medications, money. Evelyn answered carefully, often with a glance toward the door. When Ms. Lewis asked about bank access, Evelyn's breath caught. "Did anyone help you change your accounts?" Ms. Lewis asked. Evelyn swallowed. "Mark," she whispered. "He said it was easier." "Did you want that change?" Ms. Lewis asked. Evelyn's voice dropped. "I didn't want to make him mad." Nora's stomach twisted. Even here, Evelyn's reflex was the same. Protect Mark's mood. Ms. Lewis turned to Nora. "We'll need documentation," she said. "Bank letters, copies of legal forms, anything showing authority changes." "I have Evelyn's mail," Nora said. "Shredded notices, and a lawyer's card with my husband's handwriting." She handed it over. Ms. Lewis read the words on the back. "Bring her," and her expression tightened. "We'll contact this firm today." Nora's phone buzzed on the chair. Mark. Nora's pulse jumped. Kara's eyes narrowed, warning her not to give him anything. Nora stepped into the hallway anyway, keeping Kara within earshot. "What do you want?" Nora asked. Mark's voice was smooth. "Where are you?" "At the hospital." "How is she?" It was the first time he'd asked that, and it landed wrong. Late, careful, performed. "She's stable," Nora said. "Don't come here with paperwork." A beat. Then Mark's tone sharpened. "So you're convinced I'm stealing from my own mother?" "The bank flagged exploitation," Nora snapped. "They said the signature doesn't match." Silence stretched. Nora could almost hear him choosing a story. "You spoke to the bank without authorization," Mark said. "I spoke because she can't," Nora shot back. "You took her phone." Mark exhaled, tight. "Nora, you're letting strangers manipulate you. Evelyn is confused. Kara is poisoning you. And you're enjoying this because it makes you feel less guilty for never being around." The guilt hit exactly where he aimed it. Nora forced her voice steady. "Cooperate with APS and the hospital," she said, "or you're proving the concern." Mark's tone dropped, slow and threatening. "Be careful, Nora." Nora hung up. Kara stepped closer, eyes burning. "He's cornered," she said. "That's when he gets dangerous." "Then tell me facts," Nora demanded. "All of them." Kara's voice stayed low. "Mark is drowning. He got pulled into a quick money thing. Private lending, promises, short-term returns. When it went bad, he didn't stop. He borrowed to cover losses. And when Mom got that payout from selling her place, he saw a rope." Nora felt cold. "He never told me." "Because he can't stand looking small next to you," Kara said. "And Tanya, she isn't a caregiver. She's a connection. She brings people in when someone is desperate." Nora remembered Evelyn's whisper. "He owes them. They come for signatures." The pieces were starting to lock into place. They returned to the room. Evelyn watched them with worried eyes, reading the tension like weather. Ms. Lewis spoke first. "The bank is placing an emergency hold pending investigation," she said. "That should prevent any closure or transfers today." Nora exhaled, relief shaking through her. But Ms. Lewis continued. "The law firm claims they have a notarized power of attorney signed by Evelyn and properly witnessed." Evelyn's face drained. Kara's hand tightened on her mother's fingers. "Mom," she whispered, "look at me." Nora's voice went tight. "She didn't understand what she signed," Nora said. "They took her glasses." Ms. Lewis nodded once. "That may be true, but the document exists. To challenge it, we need the notary and the circumstances." Evelyn's lips trembled. "He said it was a friend," she whispered. "A nice lady." Nora leaned close. "Do you remember her?" "Curly hair," Evelyn whispered, "and a pin, a little flag." Kara went still. "Mrs. Klein," she breathed. "A neighbor from Mom's old block. She's a notary. Mom trusted her." Nora's stomach turned. Someone familiar. Someone who could smile kindly and stamp a paper that stole a life. Ms. Lewis's expression tightened. "That gives us a lead." Evelyn's eyes filled again. "Please, don't make him angry," she whispered. Nora knelt beside the bed, voice gentle but unmovable. "Evelyn," she said, You are not responsible for his anger. You don't have to protect him by hurting yourself." Evelyn's mouth trembled. "I'm his mother," she whispered. "If he falls, it's my fault." "No," Nora said, fighting tears. "If he falls, it's because he chose to use you instead of asking for help." Ms. Lewis added quietly, "We also found Tanya listed at a prior clinic visit as care support." Evelyn's breathing quickened. "She was with Mark?" she whispered. Nora asked carefully, "Did Tanya ever take you somewhere you didn't want to go?" Evelyn's eyes opened wide. Her lips moved, and for a moment no sound came. Then she whispered, "The storage unit." Nora went still. "Storage unit?" Evelyn nodded faintly. "Mark has one. He said it was old furniture. But Tanya took me there, and they made me sign something there." Ms. Lewis leaned in, immediate. "Do you know where it is, Evelyn? The name of the place?" Evelyn's forehead tightened in effort. "Blue Doors," she whispered. "Near the highway. A big sign. I can't remember the words." Kara glanced at Nora, urgency in her eyes. "Mark's car," she said. "He keeps everything in that glove box, contracts, gate codes, receipts. If there's a unit number, it'll be there." A storage unit was private, quiet, perfect for papers, perfect for threats, perfect for destroying proof before anyone could stop it. Nora felt the key in her pocket again, metal biting into skin. If Mark knew Nora had it, then Mark knew Nora was close. If you're watching this, ask yourself, when a person with something to hide realizes you're searching, what do they do first? Apologize or erase evidence? Nora's phone buzzed again. A new text from Mark. Just 3 words. "Don't go there." Rain tapped the hospital window in quick, impatient bursts. The room was dim, lit by a bedside lamp and the steady green glow of the monitor. Evelyn lay awake, staring at the ceiling like she could keep her fears up there, out of reach. Kara stepped out for coffee. The door clicked shut, and Evelyn flinched. "It's just Kara," Nora whispered. "You're safe." Evelyn turned her head toward Nora, eyes wet. "Nora, can I tell you something?" she murmured. "Without you hating him?" Nora's throat tightened. "I hate what's been done to you," she said. "Tell me the truth." Evelyn swallowed. "I kept thinking if I stayed quiet, it would pass. Like a storm." "Quiet doesn't stop storms," Nora said, squeezing her hand. "Start at the beginning." "It started with bills," Evelyn whispered. "Mark said he was behind. He said you didn't need to worry because you work so hard." "Behind on what?" Nora asked. "Everything," Evelyn said. "Mortgage, cards." He was angry, but not loud. Cold. She paused. "Then he asked me for help." Nora's stomach dropped. "Money," Evelyn nodded. "He said it was temporary. I remembered him as a boy. I kept seeing the child who needed me." Her voice cracked. "So I helped, with my savings, and the money from selling my house." Nora's eyes burned. Evelyn had given up her last safe place, and Mark had turned it into a pipeline. At first he was grateful, Evelyn whispered. "He cooked. He smiled. He called me Mom, like I mattered." Her gaze drifted. "Then the money went faster. He said there were fees, penalties. He wouldn't show me statements. He said numbers would confuse me." Nora's voice went low. "That's when Tanya came." Evelyn's breath caught. "Mark called her a helper. She didn't talk to me like a person. She talked to Mark." Evelyn swallowed hard. "The first time she brought a man in a suit. He smiled like we were friends." "The lawyer," Nora whispered. Evelyn nodded. "They said they were going to make things easier. Then they put papers in front of me." Nora's pulse thudded. "Power of attorney. Medical and financial," Evelyn whispered. "They took my glasses." Nora felt ice spread through her chest. "Who?" "Mark," Evelyn said, ashamed. "He said the print was too small. Tanya said, 'We'll read it for you.'" Evelyn's eyes filled. "They read the parts Mark wanted?" "Did you say no?" Nora asked. "Yes," Evelyn breathed. "I said I wanted to talk to you." Her hand trembled. Mark grabbed my arm hard enough to leave a mark and hissed, "Stop embarrassing me." Nora went still. Evelyn's voice shook. Then he leaned down and said, "If you tell Nora, I'll make sure she never looks at you the same." Tears slid down her cheeks. "He said he'd tell you I was losing it, that I was accusing him, that you'd send me away." Nora's eyes flooded. "So you signed?" Evelyn nodded. "I signed." Nora forced herself to breathe. "What happened after?" Evelyn spoke quicker now, like the dam finally cracked. "He took my phone. He took my mail. He started deciding what I ate. He brought my pills and watched me swallow." Her breath turned shallow. "And the fog. The medicine that wasn't mine. The sedative," Nora said. Evelyn nodded. "Tanya brought it. She said it was for anxiety. Mark said it would keep me calm so I wouldn't fall." She shook her head, terrified. "It made me slow. It made it hard to argue." Nora's jaw clenched. "He was training you," Evelyn whispered. "Then he said there was a second step." Nora's heart pounded. "The storage unit." Evelyn nodded. "Blue doors near the highway. Tanya drove. Mark sat in front. I sat in back like a child." Her voice dropped. "Inside there was a little table, a lamp, stacks of papers, and a notary." Nora's stomach turned. "Mrs. Klein." Evelyn's eyes squeezed shut. "She smiled at me. She said she was proud of me for planning ahead." Evelyn's voice broke. "But it wasn't for me. It was for Mark." Kara returned and froze when she saw Nora crying. "What's happening?" Evelyn looked at her daughter and whispered, "He used me." Kara's face tightened, then softened. She set the coffee down and took Evelyn's other hand. "I'm here, Mom." Evelyn stared at the ceiling again. "Mark said the debts weren't just banks," she whispered. "He said people would come. People who don't care about laws." She swallowed hard. "He said if I didn't help him finish it, it would be my fault when they came." "Finish what?" Nora asked, voice hoarse. "Closing my account," Evelyn whispered. "Moving what was left, changing beneficiaries, my life insurance, my retirement." She sobbed quietly. "He said it would protect the family." Nora shook her head. "That's theft." Evelyn's voice turned small. "Then he said if I fought him, he'd make me disappear." Nora went cold. "Disappear? A facility far away," Evelyn whispered. "He said he'd tell them I was unsafe, delusional. He said they'd believe him because he had papers." She looked at Nora, pleading. "And he said you would believe him, too. He said you'd want it quiet." Nora covered her mouth. All her success meant nothing in this room. Evelyn inhaled shakily. "I tried to call you," she whispered. "He took the phone. I tried again. He took my glasses." She cried, ashamed. "I didn't want to ruin your marriage. So I stayed quiet and I let him take pieces of me." "You didn't ruin anything," Nora whispered. "He did." Evelyn's eyes flicked toward Nora's pocket. "The box," she whispered. "That's why I hid it." Nora's heart hammered. "What's inside?" "Receipts," Evelyn said. "Forms. A burner phone Tanya left." Her lips trembled. "And a recording. Mark on the porch one night, talking about me like I was a number." Kara's breath caught. "You recorded it?" Evelyn nodded faintly. "I got scared. I thought one day you'd need to hear him." Nora swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "Evelyn, where is it exactly?" "The box." "In the hallway closet," Evelyn whispered. "Behind the coats." Her eyes searched Nora's face. "Do you still believe I'm not a burden?" Nora's tears fell again. "I believe you were treated like one," she said. "And that ends now." Kara looked at Nora, urgent. "We don't go alone," she said. "We go with Ms. Lewis. We bring police if we have to." Then she turned to you, the listener, without meaning to. "What kind of son shows up with a notary instead of an apology?" A firm knock hit the door. 3 hard taps. Paige, the nurse, stepped in, face tight. "Miss Whitman," she said quietly, "your husband is downstairs." Nora's blood ran cold. "How?" "He says he has legal authority," Paige replied, "and he brought someone with him." Kara's face went pale. "Who?" Paige lowered her voice. "A lawyer, and a woman who claims she's a notary." Evelyn's eyes widened in terror. And Nora, wiping tears with shaking hands, realized the truth had finally been spoken out loud, and Mark had already arrived to take it back. Downstairs, the elevator chimed, and Nora knew the fight was starting right now. Nora didn't let herself sprint. Every part of her wanted to rush downstairs and confront Mark in public, to shout the truth until it couldn't be ignored. But Evelyn's hand gripped her wrist with surprising strength. "Please," Evelyn whispered, eyes wide. "Don't leave me." That plea stopped Nora cold. Nora sat back down and held Evelyn's hand in both of hers. "I'm not leaving you," she said, steady and low. "Not again." Kara was already on her phone. "I'm calling Ms. Lewis," she said. "And security." Paige, the nurse, nodded. "I'll notify the charge nurse," she said. "No one gets in here without clearance." Nora leaned closer to Evelyn. "You don't have to face him," Nora said. "You don't have to explain anything. You just have to breathe. Let us do the talking." And Evelyn's chin trembled. "He'll say I'm confused." "Then we'll show them you're not," Nora replied. "And even if you were, you'd still deserve respect." In the hallway, footsteps sped up. A radio crackled. The hospital was waking up to the fight Mark had brought inside. Ms. Lewis arrived within minutes, calm but alert. "He's in the lobby with a lawyer," she said. "He claims he has notarized authority. The hospital is holding him there until we verify." Nora's pulse hammered. "Can he make decisions right now?" "Not today," Ms. Lewis said. "Evelyn can state her preferences. That matters." Ms. Lewis turned toward the bed. "Evelyn, do you want Mark involved in your medical decisions right now?" Evelyn swallowed. Her voice barely emerged. "No." One word, and it sounded like a door closing. Ms. Lewis nodded. "Okay, that's your right. We'll document it." Kara exhaled, shaky with relief. "What happens next?" "We document," Ms. Lewis said. "We contact the bank's fraud unit. We request copies of any notarized forms, and you should consult an attorney who handles elder exploitation." Nora nodded. "I will." Ms. Lewis added, "Secure Evelyn's personal property, ID, checkbook, phone, and any recordings or documents. Anything he can destroy." Nora's pocket went heavy again. The box. The key. Nora's eyes met Kara's. Kara understood immediately. "We go now," Kara said. "Not later." Nora looked at Evelyn. "Is it okay if we retrieve your things?" she asked gently. "We'll be careful." Evelyn's gaze searched Nora's face like she was deciding whether trust was still possible. Then she nodded, small and shaky. "Just, don't let him take it." "I won't," Nora promised. A hospital security officer escorted them to the garage, then followed behind as they drove. The rain had turned into a cold mist that stuck to Nora's lashes and made the city look smeared and distant. On the way, Kara stared out the window. "He'll blame you," she said. Nora tightened her grip on the wheel. "Let him," she replied. "I'm done letting guilt make me quiet. If you're listening, ask yourself something honest. How many times have you avoided a hard truth because it was easier to keep the peace?" Nora had done that for years. Kept the peace, stayed busy, stayed numb, until peace became permission. At the house, they didn't go in alone. The security officer stayed visible at the curb. Kara entered first, scanning corners, checking locks, listening for movement. The home smelled like lemon cleaner over something stale, like someone had tried to erase a scene. Nora went straight to the hallway closet. Her fingers shook as she slid the key into the small padlock hooked through the box's flaps. Click. The lock released. Nora lifted the lid. Inside, everything was arranged like someone hiding evidence couldn't bring themselves to destroy it. A stack of receipts, rubber banded, gas station purchases, wire transfer fees, notary charges, storage unit payments, a small prepaid phone wrapped in a grocery bag, a folder labeled, in Evelyn's shaky handwriting, "For Nora." Nora's throat tightened. She opened it carefully. Copies of forms, power of attorney, beneficiary changes, consent documents, some signed in a jagged scrawl that looked nothing like Evelyn's neat old signature, and at the bottom, a flash drive. "The recording," Kara whispered. Nora nodded, swallowing hard. "She did this while she was terrified," Nora said. "She still tried to protect herself." Kara's voice cracked. Mom has been protecting everyone her whole life. Nora photographed the contents, then packed the receipts, phone, folder, and flash drive into a tote bag. Before leaving, Nora walked through the house with new eyes. Evelyn's empty room, the carefully made bed, the closet door that didn't quite close, the kitchen table where the envelope had been. It hit her how easy it was to hide cruelty behind normal furniture. In the entryway, Nora paused, breathing hard. "I keep thinking about my calendar," she admitted. "All those blocks of time I treated like life." Kara didn't look away. "And now?" Nora's voice went steady. "Now the only block that matters is her." For Nora, that decision felt like stepping off a moving train. She pictured her office, glass walls, the constant ping of new requests, the way she had worn exhaustion like a badge. She remembered her own mother ironing late at night when Nora was a kid, whispering, "Work hard, honey. Don't ever need anyone." Nora had taken that advice and turned it into a religion. Now she could see the cost. An elderly woman suffering in silence because busy sounded more respectable than present. Right there, in that hallway, Nora opened her phone and emailed her assistant. Emergency leave, indefinite. No explanation, no apology. Then she called her building management to change locks and deactivate any spare keys Mark might have. She called her own bank to flag any unusual activity on shared accounts and asked for an immediate review of recent transfers. Each call felt like pulling a thread out of a knot that had been tightening for months. "My job can replace me," Nora said, ending the last call. "Evelyn can't replace time." Back at the hospital, Ms. Lewis met them near a small conference room. Nora laid everything out on the table. Receipts, forms, the prepaid phone, the flash drive, like she was finally bringing daylight into a room that had been dark for too long. Ms. Lewis's face tightened as she scanned the documents. "This is significant," she said. "This supports coercion and financial exploitation. We'll secure it and contact law enforcement for guidance." Evelyn waited in her room, anxious, watching Nora's face for any sign that the world was about to punish her for speaking. Nora returned and sat beside the bed again, close enough that Evelyn could feel her presence. "We have it," Nora whispered. "You did the right thing." Evelyn's eyes filled. "Is he mad?" Nora's chest ached. "He can be mad," she said softly. "He doesn't get to own you." Kara brushed a hand over Evelyn's hair. "We're going to bring you home with us," she said. "Not back there. Not alone." Evelyn's lips trembled. "I don't want to ruin." "You're not ruining anything," Nora said, firm. "You're surviving." They stepped out into the hallway again, ready to request a formal no-contact note in Evelyn's chart, ready to listen to the recording when the investigator said it was safe, ready to rebuild everything from the ground up. Then Nora's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A photo of Nora's house, taken from across the street, and beneath it, 3 words. "I can wait." The days after Evelyn left the main hospital blurred into a relentless routine of paperwork and quiet recovery. She moved into a short-term rehab unit in Chicago, where the hallways smelled like disinfectant and cinnamon air freshener. Nora showed up every morning with approved tea, clean socks, and a small notebook where she wrote down Evelyn's meds, meals, and mood, because if someone had been controlling Evelyn through details, Nora would reclaim those details with care. Evelyn tried to smile through the visits, but the apology reflex still lived in her bones. "I'm sorry you're wasting your day on me," she whispered once. Nora crouched by the wheelchair and held her hand. "You didn't waste your life raising him," Nora said. "So no, you're not a waste." Kara found an elder law attorney named Simone Fields. Simone didn't chase drama. She talked like she was building a fence around someone's rights. In Simone's office, the evidence sat on the table. Receipts, copied forms, the prepaid phone, and the flash drive Evelyn had hidden. "This shows coercion," Simone said, "and the notary piece matters." Nora's stomach tightened. "Can we undo the power of attorney?" "We can challenge it," Simone said. "We'll request the notary log and witnesses, put Evelyn's statement in writing while she's stable, and ask the court for emergency protection." Evelyn flinched at the word court. "I don't want him ruined," she whispered. Nora kept her voice gentle. "You can love your son and still protect yourself," she said. "Love isn't permission." They listened to the recording that afternoon. Nora expected yelling. What she heard was worse. Mark's voice, calm and practical. "She'll forget," Mark said on the audio. "We just move it fast." Nora felt her throat close. Kara's knuckles went white. Simone paused the audio. "That's intent," she said. "Not just mistakes." 2 days later, Simone secured an emergency protective order blocking Mark from contacting Evelyn directly or controlling her finances. The bank placed an official hold and shifted Evelyn's accounts into safeguarded verification. The rehab facility flagged Mark's name for restricted access. When Nora handed Evelyn a new phone with large icons and only trusted numbers, Evelyn stared at it like it didn't belong to her. "Am I allowed?" Evelyn whispered. Nora swallowed, furious at the question. "You're allowed to own your life," she said. Evelyn pressed the phone to her chest and cried without sound. Mark didn't fade quietly. Messages came through relatives. Unknown voicemails insisted this was a misunderstanding. One afternoon, Kara spotted his car at the curb, engine running, wipers moving in the drizzle. He didn't come in. He just watched. Evelyn's face drained when Nora told her. "Don't make him angry," she whispered automatically. Nora took her hand and forced Evelyn to look at her. "He doesn't get to own the air you breathe," Nora said. "If he crosses a line, we report it. That's it." Mark drove away, but Nora felt the warning. He was still trying to control the story from the shadows. That night, Nora sat alone in her condo, city lights blinking beyond the glass, and she couldn't stop thinking about how prepared everyone had been. The nurses, the bank, Simone. No one had been shocked. They'd been ready. Nora opened her laptop and typed a question that made her hands tremble. How many Evelyns are living in silence right now? She thought about all the times she'd accepted "I'm fine" because it was convenient. She decided the ending wouldn't be only Mark gets stopped. The ending would be fewer people like Mark get the chance. Nora built the plan the way she'd built her career. Focused, specific. She called it the Quiet Hands Network because Evelyn's hands had told the whole story, trembling, apologizing, still reaching out even when no one protected her. It started small, a weekly check-in list for seniors identified by social workers, a hotline number with clear emergency steps, and a monthly workshop in a donated community center room, bank fraud basics, elder law rights, and ask the second question training for families. Kara raised an eyebrow when Nora said it out loud. "You're building an organization," she said. "I'm building a net," Nora replied. "So busy doesn't become an excuse again." Simone agreed to speak at the first workshop. A bank representative agreed to explain warning signs. A hospital social worker offered local resources. A church offered volunteers to call isolated seniors and deliver groceries. The next morning, Nora stopped by a small print shop on her way to rehab and picked up simple flyers. No flashy branding, just clear words. "If you're scared at home, you can call." She taped one to the rehab bulletin board with permission, then another at a neighborhood pharmacy where older customers waited in line with coupons and tired eyes. By the end of the week, the voicemail received its first message. A man's voice, shaky and proud at the same time. "My name is Frank," he said. "I'm 78. My grandson handles my card. He says I forget things. Maybe I do, but I don't like how he talks to me. Is that normal?" Nora sat at her kitchen table listening to that recording twice, the same way she'd listened to Mark's. Her hands trembled, but this time it wasn't helplessness. It was responsibility. She called Frank back with a volunteer social worker on speaker. They didn't accuse anyone. They asked calm questions. They offered resources. They told him the simplest truth, the one Evelyn had needed someone to say months ago. "You deserve to feel safe." That night, Nora visited Evelyn and told her about Frank. Evelyn's eyes filled, not with shame this time, but with a quiet, aching recognition. "So it's not just me," she whispered. "No," Nora said, brushing her thumb gently over Evelyn's knuckles. "And that's why we're doing this. But Nora asked Evelyn for permission first. Permission to be seen without shame. "I don't want pity," Evelyn whispered. Nora nodded. "Then we won't ask for pity," she said. "We'll ask for dignity." Evelyn swallowed. "Can I say one thing?" "Yes," Nora whispered. "I want to tell them. They're not a burden," Evelyn said. The first meeting happened on a cold Thursday evening. Folding chairs filled slowly. Older couples, adult children, a nurse in scrubs, a man in a veteran's cap. Nora stood at the front, heart pounding harder than any boardroom ever had. How many of you have heard an older loved one say, "I'm fine," when you knew they weren't? She asked. Hands rose. More than she expected. Nora's voice cracked. "Ask the second question," she said. "Don't let 'I'm fine' end the conversation." After Simone and the bank speaker finished, Nora looked at Evelyn. Evelyn rose slowly, wrapped in a soft shawl, Kara's hand hovering near her elbow. The room went quiet. "I was afraid to ask for water," Evelyn said, voice thin but clear. "I thought being quiet would keep my family safe." She swallowed. Quiet made me smaller. A woman in the second row covered her mouth. Evelyn lifted her chin. "If you are old," she said, "you are not a burden. And if someone makes you feel like one, tell someone anyway." Applause rose. Soft at first, then stronger. Nora stepped beside Evelyn and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. And through the glass doors at the far end of the hall, Nora saw a silhouette under the streetlight. Still, watching. Familiar. Mark. Nora's chest tightened. The fight wasn't over. But now, it was out in the open. Spring came late that year, like Chicago needed extra time to thaw. On the first warm afternoon, Nora opened the rehab courtyard doors and let the air roll in. It smelled like damp soil and fresh grass. Sunlight fell across the tiles in bright squares, and for the first time in weeks, Evelyn didn't flinch when footsteps passed behind her. She sat in a wicker chair with a blanket over her knees, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. The bruises were fading. The fear didn't vanish in a single day, but it was loosening, slowly like a tight knot giving up a little at a time. Nora pulled her chair close. "You're quiet today," she said. Evelyn's mouth curved into a small smile. "I'm practicing," she whispered. "Practicing what?" "Being here," Evelyn said, without listening for footsteps. Kara stepped into the courtyard with a folder under her arm. Her face looked tired, but steady. Simone called. She said softly, "We got the extension on the protective order. Mark can't contact Mom, and he can't touch her accounts." Evelyn's fingers tightened around the mug. "Is he in trouble?" "He's being investigated," Kara said carefully. "The bank reports, the rehab notes, the recording, the storage unit paperwork, it's all documented now." Evelyn's eyes filled. "He was my little boy," she whispered, like saying it could rewind time. Nora took her hand. "You can grieve who you wanted him to be," Nora said gently, "and still protect yourself from who he chose to become." Evelyn's lips trembled. "I keep wondering where I failed." Kara shook her head. "Mom, you didn't fail. You loved. He used it." Evelyn stared into her tea, and for a long moment the only sound was a bird calling from somewhere beyond the courtyard fence. Then Evelyn whispered, almost to herself, "I'm tired of apologizing." Nora's chest tightened. "Then don't," she said. "Not here." That week Nora went home for the first time since the night everything broke. She didn't go alone. Kara came with her, and a police officer waited outside while Nora retrieved personal items and made changes that felt like cutting ropes. She changed the locks. She froze shared cards. She flagged every account Mark had ever touched. She didn't argue with him. She didn't negotiate. She simply removed access. Because Nora had finally learned something painful. A person who controls through fear will treat every conversation like an opening. 2 days later, Mark left a voicemail. His voice was calm, which made it worse. "You're embarrassing yourself," he said. "You're letting Kara turn you against me. Mom is confused, and you're making it public because you feel guilty you weren't around." Nora listened once, then deleted it. She didn't need his voice living inside her phone anymore, but Evelyn heard that he'd been questioned, and she went quiet again. Nora found her by the rehab window that evening, fingers pressed lightly to the glass. "What are you thinking?" Nora asked. Evelyn didn't turn right away. "I'm thinking about the times I lied for him," she whispered. "About bruises. About pills. About the way he spoke to me. I told myself it was love." Nora swallowed. "It was fear," she said. Evelyn nodded slowly. "Fear is a hungry thing," she murmured. "It eats you without making a sound." After a long silence, Evelyn finally faced Nora with a steadiness Nora hadn't seen before. "I want to change my will," Evelyn said. Kara blinked. "Mom," Evelyn lifted a hand gently. "Not out of revenge," she said. "Out of clarity." Simone helped Evelyn update everything properly. Witnesses, evaluations, safeguards. Kara became her agent for medical and financial decisions. Evelyn set up a plan for her own care first, without shame. Then Evelyn asked Simone to allocate a portion to the Quiet Hands Network. Nora's throat tightened. "You don't have to." "I want to," Evelyn said. "I want other people to have what I didn't. A second question, a safe number to call." Nora didn't just build a network for strangers. She rebuilt her own life around Evelyn, one choice at a time. She took an extended leave from her firm and stopped measuring her worth by calendar blocks. She learned Evelyn's small preferences: mild tea with honey, an extra blanket folded at the foot of the bed, the way Evelyn relaxed when a lamp stayed on low at night. Nora joined a caregiver support group, not for sympathy, but for tools. How to document patterns, how to speak to professionals, how to stay calm when someone tries to rewrite reality, how to set boundaries without cruelty. Each lesson felt like paying back a debt of attention she owed Evelyn. The network grew, slow and steady, not flashy. Volunteers checked in with isolated seniors. A bank rep taught families how to spot red flags. A few pharmacies posted the hotline beside the blood pressure machines. It was small work, but it was real work, and it made older people feel seen. One evening after a meeting, an older man approached Evelyn with trembling hands. "My daughter says I'm a burden," he whispered. "Sometimes I believe her." Evelyn held his hands and looked him in the eye. "Then borrow my belief until you find your own," she said. "You are not a burden." Nora watched that and felt something inside her settle. This was the legacy. Not money, not titles. Presence. A few months later, Evelyn moved into a small, sunny apartment near Kara's place in Indianapolis. Wide doorways, a little balcony, a kitchen window facing a row of trees. Nora helped set it up with practical things Evelyn could control herself. Her own pill organizer, her own phone, her own key. The first night Evelyn slept there, she texted Nora one sentence: "No footsteps." Nora read it 3 times and cried at her own kitchen table. When Nora visited the next weekend, Evelyn was humming while she buttered toast. The smell of warm bread filled the room. The radio played a soft old song. Evelyn turned and smiled like she was surprised she was allowed to feel peaceful. Nora hugged her, and Evelyn whispered into her shoulder, "I'm glad you came home early." Nora's throat burned. "Me too," she said. Later they sat on the balcony with 2 mugs of tea. Kids rode bikes down the street. A lawnmower buzzed in the distance. Ordinary life. Safe, uncomplicated. Nora looked at Evelyn and spoke the truth that had been waiting underneath her whole life. Success means nothing if the people who raised you suffer in silence. Evelyn's eyes filled, but this time her tears weren't shame. They were release. "And now I want to ask you something, because this story doesn't only belong to Nora and Evelyn. Do you have someone in your life who always says, 'I'm fine,' even when their eyes say something else? If you do, ask the second question. Call them. Visit them. Listen longer than feels convenient. And if this story hit your heart, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what success means to you now. If you want more stories like this, stories that honor the quiet sacrifices of elders and the courage it takes to protect them, please like this video, subscribe, and stay with us. Because somewhere right now, someone like Evelyn is waiting for one person to show up and choose presence over excuses.